I started playing music when I was 10 years old and went through high school. And one of the things that influenced me the most was I grew up in Lakeland, Florida. And in Lakeland around 1974, to give away my age, I'm 59, they had created what's called the Lakeland Civic Center. So all of the major bands, Commodores, Earth, Wind and Fire, everyone came through. And the tickets were at the time, they're not where they are right now, but they're at the time where as a kid, you could mow some lawns and buy a ticket and go see your favorite band.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley in partnership with Leumitech, sponsored by Homeward Ventures, Hippo Insurance, Upwest Labs, Synergy Global, Hillel at Stanford, Leap, Birthright Excel, Serona Partners, and in media partnership with CTech. Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. This episode is all about jazz and in the workplace and engineering and everything in between. It's really a special episode with a fascinating conversation with Gerald Leonard, a professional musician, but also a real thought leader in the way workplaces can improve agility and improve the work of teams. A professional bassist, Gerald J. Leonard offers a unique approach to accomplishing more productivity in the workplace. Gerald is an international Keynote bassist and culture change expert. His programs integrate music, productivity, workplace culture, and neuroscience. Gerald Leonard is the author of Culture is the Bass: 7 Steps to Creating High-Performing Teams, listed on Entrepreneur Magazine as one of the top 15 books on business culture that you need to read today, and the book Workplace Jazz: How to Improvise, listed on Human Resources Online as one of the top 10 must-read HR books. Gerald is the CEO of Principles of Execution, DBA Turnberry Premiere, a strategic project portfolio management, culture change, and IT consulting firm with over 20 years of experience working with large federal and state governments and multinational corporations. Gerald J. Leonard, thank you so much for joining me from Alabama. How are you?
I'm doing well, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic because we're going to be talking about the intersection of music, thinking, being an all-rounded person, and leadership, especially when it comes to the workplace. And so we're talking about a few of my really favorite things here. Gerald, I see keyboard behind you. I see the word culture and the word bass.
Yes.
How do these things even come up together in the same place in your office, what I assume?
Well, yeah, as you can say, this is my office. This is my business office and my music office. Behind me, I have a electric upright bass and a couple of electric basses, as well as keyboard and studio equipment. I started playing music when I was 10 years old and went through high school. And one of the things that influenced me the most was I grew up in Lakeland, Florida. And in Lakeland around 1974, to give away my age, I'm 59, they had created what's called the Lakeland Civic Center. So all of the major bands, Commodores, Earth, Wind and Fire, everyone came through. And the tickets were at the time, they're not where they are right now, but they're at the time where as a kid, you could mow some lawns and buy a ticket and go see your favorite band.
Incredible.
That was an amazing influence on me. So I went and did my bachelor's and master's, studied at Cincinnati Conservatory, got a chance to play Carnegie Hall in grad school.
Wow.
Went to New York, studied with my teacher's teacher up in New York, a guy named David Walter, who taught at Juilliard and the Manhattan School of Music. And I would slip my bass down to Juilliard, take lessons from him for about a year, and played professionally in New York, and then did some ministry work, had a family, and, made a decision. I really didn't want to be on the road. So I was playing locally. And that's when I got into IT, into technology, into business. But I kept playing music because that was my love. That was what I loved to do. But I was responsible from the standpoint of that's how I grew up. My dad was always there. And I saw myself as, hey, I have kids now. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be in their lives. I don't want to be the weekend dad kind of thing, or the during the week dad for a couple of days, and then you're out playing gigs. And those two careers grew side by side. And I had already had my master's, so I went and did a lot of certifications and project manager certifications and business certifications. And later on, as my kids were growing up, they began to get more into music as well. So it brought music full force back into my life in a major way, besides just playing some gigs here and there and doing a lot of different things that I was doing. I began to see the merger between the two. And I think what was really interesting was going and playing a concert or a show or recording, and then going and doing some consulting, some business work. And I started seeing the similarities between a great performance in music and a great project in business. And that the personality, the character of the team, the flavor, you're a musician. So, when you get together with other musicians, there's like a brotherhood, irregardless of where you come from, irregardless of what language you speak, irregardless of what color you are. There's an emotional brotherhood that happens, or sisterhood that happens when you get together and play music. It's a spiritual connection that you develop. And what I found was that business teams where people were really good at what they did, but were willing to leave their ego at the door, think about the big picture, would normally develop the same kind of brother sisterhood camaraderie. And it really made a difference in the types of projects. And you'll find that a lot of developers, software developers, are musicians as well, because music develops the mathematical part of the brain. And it also creates something called whole brain integration.
What does that mean?
That I wrote about in my book. Well, whole brain integration, a couple of folks that had that were like Winston Churchill and Henry Ford. Henry Ford was also a trained violinist. In fact,
really,
at the beginning of his career and throughout his life, he owned the largest collection of classical Italian violins in the United States.
Wow.
And he's a classical trained musician, besides being, the founder of Ford Motors. Well, Winston Churchill was a prolific painter, besides being the prime minister of the UK. But both of these gentlemen had to face major challenges in their life, and they needed the ability to think big picture as well as details. And what whole brain integration gives you is the ability to use your right brain and your left brain simultaneously. And in the middle of our brains, we have what's called the corpus callosum. It's a lot of fibers that connect both hemispheres. And as a musician, when you're either reading music or playing music, and you're playing the instrument and you're looking at and you're connecting, you are using your right brain and your left brain. Both are working simultaneously. So as you train as a musician, you naturally develop what's called whole brain integration, where your brain, both hemispheres, are actively working at the same time. Wow. And it gives you the ability in life to see the big picture of a goal or something that you want to accomplish, while at the same time being very aware and intimately involved in the details.
I have to ask, Gerald, it sounds incredible. I mean, this sounds like the holy grail of what any person would want for themselves, right? Yeah, I don't see, everybody talking to me about how, we need to practice our instruments and to play music and have a love for art so that we can become better engineers. I'm here, I've been doing software engineering for a while. I've also been a saxophone player, and that is mainly thanks to my family, but I've never had somebody come up to me and tell me, if you want to be a better software engineer, you should go and study piano or continue playing the saxophone. Why is this, so what have you discovered here, or what is happening here that is not trivial for a lot of people to sort of conceptualize?
Well, if you look at a lot of current research in neuroscience, they're beginning to discover the power of music on the brain. I was reading an article the other day off of LinkedIn about a neuroscience magazine that I follow on LinkedIn. And they had an article about how music influences working memory and long-term and short-term memory, how it impacts it. Because if you think about it, as a musician, you learn pieces of music, right? And let's say you learn a concerto, or you learn some jazz, or you learn a rock and roll song. Well, you have to keep that song in your working memory as you're playing it. You got to keep the chord changes. You got to keep the phrases that you're going to play. Well, while you're doing that and you're having fun doing it, you're actually developing the neurological pathways for a stronger working memory. And it's the same pathways that the majority of your math thinking happens in that same part of the brain. And so I'm not sure. And I think, what I've realized is, in just my experiences, there are a lot of musicians or a lot of developers who I turn around and find out that they are musicians.
Right.
Or a lot of musicians it's easy for them to get into computers and become software developers, because music is very logical, right? It's very logical. It's 3/4, 4/4, 5/8. There's a pattern, and everything has to fit. Everything is a structure. At the same time, musical is very improvisational.
Sure.
Even from a classical standpoint, even if you're playing a Bach concerto, you get Yo-Yo Ma and you get Isaac Perlman to play the same concerto, it's going to sound different, because they're going to have a different interpretation. They may play the same exact notes, but they may phrase the notes differently. They may use more vibrato on one note than the other. It's their interpretation of that piece. So that's improvisation, even at a macro level.
And it sounds like this is looking back to what you were mentioning before about our ability to both have detail-oriented mindset, but also higher level understanding of what is our larger interpretation of this piece of the story that we're telling. And now let's execute on details while having both logic and the creativity and the improvisational capacity, right?
Exactly. In fact, did you know that Einstein was also a musician?
I did not know that.
He was also a musician. So if you think about it, it's like some of the greatest thinkers in the world have a very strong musical background.
So in that case, we should all be learning music.
Exactly. Now, and so one of my pet peeves is with the school system is when they go, well, we got to cut back on the budget. So let's do what? Let's take out
band class.
Exactly. And they think, well, that's unnecessary. We need to do more math and science and reading.
Right. I mean, it felt, at least to me, well, and I was in band class the entire, my entire schoolhood, and it always still felt that it was treated as more of an elective. And I'm pretty sure it's called an elective. It's not called like a core science or a core requirement.
Right.
Right.
But if educators understood the neuroscience and the mental development that happens with music, to me, music would become a core requirement for any, country or any organization that really wants to develop its people at the highest level. And whether they become, and what's interesting about whole brain integration, the only other way to get whole brain integration is you have to be somebody like the Dalai Lama who meditates for 30 years and literally just spend hours and hours and hours meditating. That will give you whole brain integration. That will develop the right and left brain and create that communication. But it takes years to develop that. Music, you develop it within a very short period of time that you begin to play. And it doesn't matter whether you are a professional or an amateur. As long as you are practicing, playing, and performing, again, doesn't mean that you're playing at the highest level and you're getting paid and you're playing on Carnegie Hall. It's just that you're enjoying it. But it does develop that.
So I want to also talk about that, because I think that something that can be very discouraging is how intimidating it is, right? And I remember starting out, I was very little starting off, and I had the huge privilege of growing up with a brother who's a magician on the keyboard, and he went to Juilliard and Broadway, and so it was always very intimidating for me. when I'm saying like, wow, like his ability to improvise and to understand this complex piece, for me, I turned to mathematical equations and software engineering because it was more clear to me what were the steps that I need in order to logically understand them.
Right.
So given that your understanding of the math and science world and the music world, how can we overcome those barriers so that we can reintroduce music as a core part of how we grow up in this world?
Yeah. One of my favorite musicians is a gentleman named Victor Wooten, a 5-time Grammy-winning bassist. I had a chance to meet him at a boot camp with Gerald Leonard and a few years ago. And he wrote a couple of books. In one of his books, he talks about music as a language. And Victor was kind of like yourself. His brothers were very talented musicians. And he was kind of like the little guy, literally, when I say little guy, like 5, 6 years old. And they gave him a little bass, and they teach him how to play bass. And he basically learned from being around his brothers. But if you think about it, music is a language. Now, obviously, you speak English very, very well. Did you grow up intimidated to speak English when your parents and your brother spoke at a much higher level? In fact, they could write English, they could speak it at a much higher level. They may even speak another language or two. But did you grow up intimidated? No.
No, right.
Because and here's the thing, as a child speaking, you had a chance to perform and practice with professionals all day long.
All day long.
Right? And so that quickly helped you to grow and figure out how to go from da-da to dad to putting all these different, phrases together, even before you knew the theory or what a noun was or what a verb was. Music is the same way. So if we teach music, it's almost like the Suzuki method of teaching violin, where you teach the child to play the violin first, right? You teach them by ear and you teach them by rote. That's how I learned playing. Not that I took the Suzuki method, but I learned to play the guitar and the bass by ear first. Just playing with my friends and just playing music and listening and finding the right note and then trying to figure things out. Later on, as I began to get better at playing, that's when I started studying and took lessons and studied it in school, because that's a more natural way of learning. We learn from professionals and we get to speak, and with a language like music or language like English, German, French, Italian, our parents, others who are experts, they're encouraging us. They're not going, "Oh, you said that wrong. Why'd you say it that way? What's wrong with you?" No, they never say that to us. Or you did that, you played that wrong. They simply go, they just encourage you to keep talking and keep talking. And what do? You listen and you imitate. And that's,
I think that's
the vocabulary.
English, obviously, we learn to speak. First, we learn by ear.
Right.
We learn by practicing, and then we go and study the theory behind grammar. And that only really comes to us at, I guess, 3rd grade, right? In where you actually get into the interesting details of the language. Exactly. Software engineering, the best software engineers are the ones that will tell you, I didn't learn from a textbook. I learned it because I was passionate about a project and I just started playing around with it. And then all of a sudden I was working with somebody who was better and I was getting code reviews, which is the performing with professionals, right? From the engineering side.
Exactly. And in so many areas of life, even with leadership, I was listening to Satya Nadella. He was teaching about leadership in Microsoft and just what their model, and they expressed that they have a model now called MCC, and M is to model, coach, and care. So if you think about it, that's kind of what we need from our leaders, our teachers, our coaches, right? Our trainers, is we need someone that can model the behavior, coach us in that behavior, and care about us as a human being. Right? Not just, did you do that right? Did you get this done? But to really care about us and really want the best for us personally and professionally, but by having someone who's leading the way and being a model, right? We get a pictorial example And the other part of modeling is that we all have something from a neurological standpoint called mirror neurons. And in fact, all animals have it. It's like, that's why you see, a monkey or a bear or, orangutan or cat or whatever. They, the parent kind of moves them along and shows them how to hunt, shows them how to do whatever they need to do from an instinctual standpoint. But the cubs model, and they watch the parent. It's because even them within their state have mirror neurons. We as adults, or we as human beings, have mirror neurons. So that's why if you see someone and they smile, you tend to want to smile too.
Yeah.
Because that's your mirror neurons, right? And by mimicking and putting the right models in front of us, we can then model that. We can imitate that, and then we get coached, and then we continually practice, and it's the caring part that helps us to nurture and grow and become our best.
Phenomenal. I really love that. And, this whole conversation, I think it's very uplifting for me. And I think that music has always had such a strong part in my life. And I've always questioned, what role does the music actually play in my personal development? Is this something that I just really, really enjoy doing? Is this something that's actually contributing to other things that I'm doing, and how are these elements intersecting? And I think that because it's not intuitive, I understand why most people don't understand the connection between software engineering and music. I mean, it's not a trivial intersection, and
Right.
Society in general, we're accustomed to having clear differentiation. You are right-brained, you are left-brained, right? I think many schools promote their kids to take this personality test to tell them what they are. Right. And at that point they tell, okay, you're going to be an engineer, you're going to be an artist. Okay, well, that and that's that. And I think that it's, for me, it makes me extremely curious to continue diving deep into this and ask some more meaningful questions. And so, Gerald, I already want to request that I'm going to do my research, and I'm going to come back in another episode and ask you some more meaningful questions to pick your brain, because it sounds like you've been thinking about this for quite some time, and
yes,
the world is picking up on it.
Yes, I have. And like I said, I wrote about it a lot in my latest book, Workplace Jazz, because each of those principles are principles that musicians are skills that musicians develop. Whether it's a positive attitude or the ability to use deliberate practice, or the whole idea of whole brain integration. And then I provide research from peer-reviewed organizations like NIH or Harvard or whatever, so that it's empirical data that shows that these skills actually have a positive impact on us, and they're skills that move the needle for you personally, professionally, and organizational.
I love it. Gerald, thank you so much for the time and for the energy. This was awesome. I really look forward to sharing this with everybody. And the first person I'm going to share this with are my father and my brother. So thank you very, very much. And stay safe and stay healthy.
You're more than welcome. Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate it.